Alright, and this is the replacement for a 2006 Hyundai Sonata for the input speed sensor. This little guy right here, it's gonna set you back about 70 bucks, so that's nice. You will need a 10 and a 12 millimeter wrench because that's what every bolt in this engine runs on. To get started, you're going to want to get the air filter out of the way, which is this guy right here in the middle. It's got 4 little clamps. There's one here, over here, back here, and one right in that area. You get all of those. There's a Phillips head screwdriver point right there that releases this band. You get that loosened up, and this pulls free. This whole assembly lifts out. I already did that if you couldn't tell. And this right here is an electrical cord that you will probably want to get unattached because otherwise it'll be tethered. So the easiest way to do that is do everything else first. Flip this over, and now you can see there's a piece right here that's got a gray connector to it. You want to take this gray bit out right here and pull that backwards. You might have to get a screwdriver or something and jiggle that free. Then this black part in the gray just pinches. So you pinch and pull. And you'll probably have to fight with that for 10 or 15 minutes to get that. We're just going to move that over there out of the way. You got your air filter. Like everyone else, I'll say it's a good time to replace that because, well, you've got the whole thing apart, and why not? Okay. This is the point where I don't know what I'm doing, so Axel, if you're editing this, help me out. Alright, so our next step is going to be to get this bolt, and there's one more down in here. That's right there. That'll get this whole assembly of the air filter out of the way. Now, there's a hose right there, just kind of an intake that is going to be, it's a plastic tube and it's hooked to it. You just kind of got to yank on this until that comes away. The best method for getting this out of the way I found is to grab the top up here, get it rig it free, and take the corner post here and go up over the hydraulic. Let's see if I got that. And just take this whole thing and set it out of the way up there. Now you have a much better view of your whole transmission down here. And right away you can see the output sensor right here. Now the difference between the input and the output sensor is here is our input sensor. You'll notice that its power cables point up. You've got the sensor and it points up. The output sensor down here comes up and the power cables point to the side. So that's how you tell the difference between the two of those. Your input sensor requires a little bit more digging because it's actually right here, but we have this metal piece right here and your shifter cable lines in the way, and those are going to be a hassle to get out of your way. As a side note, since the last pause there, I found the flashlight that I intended to be doing this with, so ta-da, look at that, now you can see things. So, another wonderful tip for any vehicle maintenance is that, as I have done, you should wait until it's 17 degrees outside and your tools are so cold that it hurts to touch them. That is a good pro tip for doing car stuff. It really makes the job a lot more fun. Oh. Alright, so after you have unscrewed the couple bolts that were right here, you end up with this magnificent piece, which is just used to support your air filter system. So after you have that out of the way, you actually have a little bit more access to the engine compartment down here and getting to this bolt right here for the shifter cable. And once you have that out of the way, you can actually get to your part. So I'm going to start back on that. Okay, so important detail. This is the first time that you switch to the 12mm bit. I'm actually going to unhook you here and bring you in a little bit closer for some clarity. So what you're going to want right here is you got this whole bracket system. You want these two bolts, I believe. You do not want this big one, which is even larger than a 12mm, so you will know you are doing something wrong if the 12mm doesn't work. You want these two down here. That'll move that whole bracket assembly out of the way and allow you to get to the part. So, once you have these two bolts out of the way, by the way, little tip, you should get a couple cups for your screws, and two different ones, one for the 10mm and one for the 12, so that you keep track of them and do not lose them. Once you get those two 12mm out of the way, the best thing to do is just take this whole assembly and rotate it up. Now I'm going to have to unmount the camera again to give you a better view. We're going to have to, now that that has rotated up and out of the way, right there is our bolt. Now, there's a little bit of oil pooled there in my engine. You might have some there as well. You probably don't want that getting into your sensor, so make sure you mop that up first. Now, it should be noted that cleaning the oil out of here will be pretty tough and might not be doable with a normal rag because it's such a small area. So something like a Q-tip or two is probably going to be your best bet as far as cleaning that out of there. It'll take a little while because obviously Q-tips are small and not very absorbent, but it's better than having oil in places it should not be. So, slight setback that you'll have to deal with. The bolt for your sensor will go back to being a 10mm, so you'll have to change that out again. Alright, so after you get the 10mm bolt loosened up there, you want to take the shifter cables, move those out of the way, and just pull your sensor up and out with the cable still attached. Right here, we have a pinch point. You're going to want to pinch that and wiggle this around until it comes free. Might take you a little more effort than that. Took me a second to get it worked out. As you can see, if I figure out where I put the other one, the input sensor has the vertical point on it instead of the horizontal for the electrical outlets. So that's how you know you got the right piece. From this point on, it's basically doing everything we've done before in reverse. And if you've got a good memory, this is where the video ends for you, because you can just stop it and go and put everything back together. If not, you can stick with me and I'll show the steps for putting it back together, which hopefully this will have taken you about 15 minutes, with this video's help. Took me about 45 with having to run and do everything. So hopefully I have helped cut your time down a little bit. So we're going to take the 10mm bolt and put that back in first, and then lower the sensor down, because otherwise it's a real pain to get that put back where it's supposed to be. I'm going to take our wrench and tighten that back into place. Alright, now that we've got that back in and tightened down, we're going to take the 12mm and rotate our cables back into place. Now we're going to take these guys and plug them back in down here. I'm sorry if that's a little bit out of focus. I wasn't actually paying attention to the camera that much. On a side note, this 15-minute fix here, if you know what you're doing, was going to cost me $200+ for the mechanic who told me what was wrong with it. Let me tell you, this is not a $200 job. This is simple, and I believe anyone can do it with the proper guidance and instruction. And I had no idea what I was doing up until the start of this video. Wasn't actually even sure where the thing was. But because no one else has made a 2006 Hyundai Sonata video as of yet, so hopefully, this being the first one, this is a helpful guide for both input and output sensors, because you got these right here. It should be easy enough to do. Alright, now we're going to go back to the 10mm. Get your screws out of your bucket here. These are going to be the two smaller of these screws. By the way, there were only 7 screws taken out for this whole video, so that should be reassuring. I'm going to take the 2 smaller ones here, as opposed to these big guys. Plug those back in with our metal piece, our support bracket. We'll get to work on that. Alright, now that we've got the support bracket back in here, we're going to start putting the air system back together. So that's going to be the big guy here. I'm going to move the camera back to its original position. Oop. So now we're going to take the bottom half of our air filter and wiggle it back around. Now the real tricky part, Now the tricky part of putting this back in is going to be this air filter hose over here, getting that plugged back in. So you're going to have to wrestle with that before you can start putting all the bolts and stuff back in. So, you know, take your time with that. So basically, once you get that air hose lined up, just take this and push and wiggle real hard, and it should all snap into place. You'll see that it'll be basically impossible to show on video, but right around the rim here, there are triangular little stoppers. You can almost see it there. There are some triangular little stoppers that allow it to snap in fairly easily. They're quite a pain to actually take out, but you probably know that already. Now we're going to get the last 3 10mm bolts, plug those back in, or at least try.